Welcome everybody. My name is Larissa Brübach and I'm with the HCI and Peace Group at the University of Würzburg. Today it is my honor to present to you our work titled When Fear Overshadows Perceived Plausibility, the Influence of Incongruencies on Acrophobia in VR. My co-authors are Deniz, Lennard, Rüffert, Franziska, Westermeier, Marc, Erich, Latoschik and Carolin, Wienrich. Virtual reality exposure therapy, or VRET for short, is an established tool for treating anxiety disorders such as acrophobia, which is the fear of heights. VR allows for customizable, controlled environments, making it a promising addition to traditional therapy. While there is a great body of research on the influence of presence in VRET, the influence of plausibility has not been studied as extensively. Previous work suggests that the plausibility illusion could have an impact on people's fear responses. However, the research about this is sparse. To bridge this gap, we wanted to investigate the role of plausibility in VRET in more detail. Specifically, we wanted to look at the role of incongruencies on fear reactions. The goal of our study is to explore how incongruent object behavior influences both perceived plausibility and fear responses in the fear of height scenario. We formulated 3 hypotheses which we wanted to explore. H1. Incongruent object behavior will reduce perceived plausibility. H2. Participants' fear will be lower with incongruent object behavior. And H3. Higher presence will lead to a higher feeling of fear. To test our hypothesis, we designed 2 VR experiments where participants interacted with objects in both high fear and low fear environments. We conducted 2 experiments with 29 and 31 participants respectively. We used a 2x2 within subject design, manipulating both congruence and height. For the congruence, we either had congruent or incongruent object behavior. In experiment 1, we manipulated object gravity. In the incongruent conditions, objects would float when dropped. In experiment 2, we manipulated object size. The objects would change in size unpredictably when picked up. For the height factor, participants were either at ground level or on top of a skyscraper or radio tower in VR. We measured perceived plausibility, fear, VR sickness, task load, and presence. Both experiments followed the same procedure. Participants started with informed consent and some pre-questionnaires. This was followed by a short tutorial to familiarize participants with the application's controls. The participants then started with the first condition in VR. Each condition took approximately 5 minutes. After each condition, they answered the post-questionnaires. This was repeated 4 times in a randomized counterbalanced order. Here you can see the first experiment. Participants had to sort bottles into colored baskets. This was the incongruent condition. As you can see, when the bottles are dropped, they do not adhere to gravity and fall down, but rather float in the air. This was the low fear conditions where participants were on the sidewalk of a street. Now you can see the high fear condition. Participants were on top of a skyscraper and had to cross a small plank to reach the baskets. The baskets were positioned below the plank to encourage participants to look down. They had to cross the plank every time they picked up a new bottle. In the shown condition, the objects had congruent object behavior and fell down into the baskets as expected. While we observed strong effects in experiment 1, we identified 3 major issues. First, the incongruent condition was harder for participants to complete as the bottles had to be thrown, which added cognitive load. Second, the high fear condition itself may have contained a priori incongruencies. This might have been caused by the unfamiliar environment and the plank. Third, we didn't explicitly measure presence, which might be influencing fear. To address these issues, we made several changes in experiment 2. Instead of manipulating gravity, we altered object size, reducing the impact on task difficulty. Here we can see that the tools are randomly changing size when picked up by the participants. The tools could either increase or decrease in size. The task was to do some repair work on a radio tower. The changed size of the tool did not influence the participant's ability to complete the task. For the high fear condition, we added an elevator which brought participants up to the top. This was done to make participants more aware of the height change. The video shows the ride up in real time. We also added glass panels to the elevator's floor to intensify the increasing height. When participants reached the top, they had the same task as seen before. We also added glass flooring to the top. Here you can see the congruent object behavior condition, where the tools did not change size. After these changes, we found no difference in the task difficulty anymore. We also found that the higher fear condition did not contain a priori incongruencies, as it was the case in the first experiment. So let's have a look at our hypothesis. Our first hypothesis was that incongruent object behavior will reduce perceived plausibility. We found no significant main effect in the perceived plausibility questionnaire. However, we did find a significant interaction effect in the perceived plausibility, being lower in the low fear incongruent condition compared to the low fear congruent condition. We can therefore partly confirm H1. We believe that the feeling of fear in the high fear condition overshadowed participants' perception of the incongruencies. As the size change of the tools did not interfere with their ability to complete the task, participants did not have to focus on it as much. Our second hypothesis was that the participants' fear will be lower with incongruent object behavior. We found a significant main effect for both the congruence and the height factor. The SUDS showed significantly lower ratings for the low fear condition, which was expected. However, we also found that the ratings were significantly lower in the congruent condition compared to the incongruent condition. We therefore have to reject H2. We believe that the unpredictable behavior of the objects might have contributed to participants' fear, causing the higher ratings. Our last hypothesis was that higher presence will lead to higher feelings of fear. We found a significant main effect for both the congruence and the height factor. The incongruent condition had lower presence scores compared to the congruent conditions. We can also see that the low fear conditions had lower presence scores compared to the high fear conditions, confirming H3. To summarize, we investigated the relationship between incongruencies, plausibility, and fear in VR. We found that both congruence manipulations were detected in the low fear conditions. However, when fear is strong enough, the perception of incongruencies is dependent on the strength of the incongruency. Our findings suggest that when fear is strong enough, it can overshadow minor incongruencies in the VR environment. This has important implications for VR exposure therapy. While perceptual breaks in plausibility, like floating objects, could introduce unnecessary stress by impacting participants' ability to complete a task, cognitive level changes, like object resizing, might not disrupt therapy. With that, I would like to thank you for your time and attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.